Welcome to At Home Is Now, the podcast about what we are excited about at this time. Welcome to Israel, and you might want to pronounce your last name yourself because I don't know how it's pronounced.
Ajose,
Ajose. Okay,
Ajose.
welcome to Israel Ajose. Thanks for coming here and
Yeah,
joining the podcast. I
yeah,
would like to
pleasure.
ask you, what is your present excitement about, and how does it fuel your joy in life?
Oh, oh, present excitement for me is, I would say, astrology. The knowledge, the science, the power, the depths of what astrology has to offer humanity. And whether it's a community or whether, again, globally, I feel astrology can really offer some wonderful insights that can empower us as human beings, whether it's individually or collectively. So this is, yeah, my excitement, my joy at this precise moment. Yeah. But I mean, even outside of that, I'm very, optimistic about life. I feel it's a great time to be alive. I think it's really exciting. I generally I love I love history. The history of humanity fascinates me. Cultures, how cultures rise and fall, and things that they have, created or done, that is still there on record that we still see, which is maybe been there for like 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago. I'm extremely fascinated by that. I always say, if I had a choice whether I could go into the future or go into the past, I think I would always choose going into the past. I would like to visit, many of the ancient cultures. But having said that, I feel we are living in extremely exciting times right now in terms of what's going on, where consciousness is taking us, and what is the new dimension, what is the new consciousness, what is it looking like for us. We're living in interesting times now, AI, and age of information and chat GPT, and what's happening. Many people are discussing that robots are coming in, the age of robots, AI and robotics, and they're going to be taking many of our jobs. So what are we going to be doing? But I'm very excited. I have a very strong sense that humanity is moving into a new place. And yeah, of course, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting by any means that all our problems are just going to go away overnight, but I feel we're going to be moving into very interesting territory, and the world, as we have known it in some way, will change. So yeah.
So, how does astrology play into this, and what are do you have a way of getting a feel for these times and what their topics are, and how one can navigate the time in a way that brings us joy?
Yeah, most definitely. Astrology is something which has been practiced, or has been practiced from time immemorial. It's by our ancestors, if we want to say ancient man, early man. We have always looked to the stars for guidance, for navigation. We have used the stars, and we still use the stars for navigating, boats on the seas, our cars. They're all based on star constellation positioning. So, but we have also used it to also navigate our lives personally, spiritually, psychologically. Um, so, astrology is a wonderful tool which allows us to kind of understand the times which we are in or we are approaching. So, so astrology can act as a tool for self understanding, to understand, well, we were all born at a certain time, place, and that where were the planets, how were the planets aligned for us when we were born, and what does that say about us? What does it tell us about our characteristics? What does it tell us about our strengths, weaknesses? What does it tell us about our spiritual life? How do we grow? What does it tell us about our vocation, our calling? What does it tell us about our talents, our habits, our love life, children, and so on and so forth? All of these questions which we all want to ask. Who are we? Why are we here? Most importantly, what is our purpose? So astrology allows us to understand our purpose in life. Um, you can't be a lion acting like a crocodile. If you know a lion, if we look at the animal kingdom, animals have their territory. They have their characteristics. They have their strengths and their weaknesses. If a lion decides tomorrow he's going to go in the water and start swimming like a crocodile, well, he's going to, end up, you know, in another nice place because it's out of its territory, right? So this is what astrology does. It navigates us in a way that we understand our territory as human beings, as individuals. Where are we good at? Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses? So collectively, also as well, we next year in 2026, for example, we're having some really major shifts, big planetary shifts, which have not happened for hundreds and in some cases thousands of years. We've got the planet Neptune moving into Aries. Saturn's going to be moving into Aries. That's a bit more frequent because Saturn and Neptune do as well. So Saturn moves into Aries every 29, 30 years. We also have the planet Uranus also moving into Gemini. So we're having a lot of big shifts which are taking place in 2026. We had some very big shifts even this year in 2025. And this year has been a real, quite moving. But next year we can definitely expect these planetary shifts that are going to be moving, that are going to be taking place to raise our awareness, raise consciousness, and provide more meaning, into our lives, and also point the ways in terms of where we should be heading and what we should be focusing on developing as human beings to make this world a better place and to make it more joyful and to make it uplifting. We're aware in various areas of the world right now, and people are, dying, and there's wars going on, all over, people being killed, and hatred, and I mean, the list is endless. And I'm not saying that necessarily any given time is necessarily. I think with wars, we everything's cyclical. Everything, we have highs and lows, but we have been having a bit of a tough time with a lot of these horrific kind of things. So I feel next year we are moving into territory where a lot of this stuff can be put to rest, and we can look for new ways and new beginnings to to get ready for that next level of consciousness, and to be happy, to be joyful. I truly feel and subscribe to the idea that every human being wants to be happy, and we are seeking things that will make us happy and make us fulfilled. I think the question is, how do we go about it? And that's where I feel things like astrology. I'm not suggesting astrology is the only answer to humanity's problems, but it will definitely, astrology is a great tool which can aid us in attaining that happiness.
And in A Course in Miracles, I don't know if you're familiar with that book. It also says what the one thing everyone can agree on is that they want to be perfectly happy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the only thing everyone can agree on. The
Yeah.
rest is very different, and but in A Course in Miracles, it does speak of a universal curriculum, but
Yeah.
it's a curriculum that is an experience. It's about
Yeah.
an experience, not about a wording or a specific teaching in
Right.
the sense of specific words or forms.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about the message. And so
Yeah.
I thought, and I think that's really amazing, because if we can be certain that there is a universal experience available to everyone,
Right. Yeah.
then and it also says we all are equal and
Hmm.
infinitely valuable. And when we are taught that we are special, right,
Hmm.
that certainly makes it a big shift to say we're equal,
Right.
right?
Right.
And we all
Yeah.
have and there is this common experience from which everything is born, right?
Right.
Everything
Right.
grows and everything
Yeah.
lives in, right?
Right. Yeah. Totally agree. I may debate the word equal though. Insofar as that, I don't. I don't. We're all equal in the context of nobody is better than anybody else, or nobody is superior or inferior to anybody else. Yeah, I subscribe very much to that, school of thought. But equal in terms of, well, I can do what you can do, and you can do what I can do, or I can do what Joe does down the road. Um, we're not so much equal there, and that's where I feel everybody on planet Earth, the universe has given us our own strengths and weaknesses, and we have to recognize those strengths and weaknesses and use them to our ability. So, but it's not going to make us equal. Every human being can run, but not every being can necessarily match Usain Bolt in 100 meters dash. So we're not equal in that sense. But yeah, if coming from a place of you know superiority or inferiority, or I'm better than you or you're better than me, yeah, we are equal for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about it's basically coming from, as long as you're in this world of separation, there's
Yeah.
differences, but that
Yes.
doesn't. But so the yes, and there's also, we all have special functions as long as we're living in a world of in this belief of separation, or this
Yeah.
experience of separation.
Yeah.
So yes, there are differences, and yes, we are equal,
Yeah.
as you were
Yeah.
pertaining. You were
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
using the word differently.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, it's quite a powerful thing to realize, right? That we are
Yeah.
equal, and yet doesn't mean we're doing the same thing, or we have the same way to experience that universal. We are have the same universal experience as a go to, but
Exactly.
the way we are able to draw from that, and the
Hmm.
way we are doing that in a world in which we are thinking separation, right? Separation thinking
Exactly.
doesn't allow us to have to recognize that experience as the same
That
while
is
we're
correct.
having it in that idea of separation.
That is
But it
correct.
doesn't mean that it isn't the same experience. It just means we're interpreting it completely differently.
Exactly. Exactly. Totally agree. Totally agree. Totally agree. Yes. That is. Um. I think as a human beings, we act. I mean, when people speak about God, for example, or God consciousness. And again, sometimes people have this idea that, oh, well, which God are you talking about? Well, there can only be one anyway. So trying to suggest that there's another one it defeats the purpose. We're all talking about that same universal that created, all, right? We're talking about the all. But I feel as a human beings, we are all filters, if you want to say, that are projecting that same God consciousness in our own way, kind of thing. I use, even with my astrology students, I tend to, there's an aspect in astrology known as the ascendant, and it's to do with how people view the world. And I always say to my students, well, if you've got on, these, when we were kids, we used to have these glasses where, they were different colors, and someone would have a yellow one, and I would have a red one, and someone would have a blue one. And I say, well, when we put them on, we're all looking at the same objects, but we're seeing, I've got the blue one on, so I'm seeing everything blue, and whoever's got the red one on sees everything as red. It doesn't change the fact that we're all looking at the same thing. So we will interpret our experiences sometimes, like you say, differently, or we may speak about them differently, or we may use different words to explain it or to express it in some kind of way. But we are all connected with that one consciousness, with that God consciousness in some way. So yeah, and through the differences we've seen, again, it sometimes can spark, depending on one's understanding or limitation around it, or sentiments or emotional connection, it sometimes does go down a road where, wars that we see today, right? Some of these wars are sometimes rooted in certain philosophical principles or philosophical understanding or religious understandings, and so people are prepared to go to war and perhaps kill, and die, for these principles. But I truly subscribe to the idea that we can have our differences and we can acknowledge our differences, but we could also realize that we're actually speaking about this same oneness. We're all in this oneness together, and like what you said, we're all equal. And we may see things from different perspectives or different understandings, but it's part of that one phenomena, and we don't necessarily need to go to that extent of maybe killing one another, or where we may cause pain and horror and sufferation to other people because of that. But then again, I subscribe to the idea that we have to experience some pain in life also as well. It's a part of that oneness also too. It's not separate from that. So the joy and pain is it's same coin, two sides of the same coin, so to speak. So it's inevitable. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, in A Course in Miracles, it says that pain and pleasure are the same.
Yeah,
It doesn't say,
gotcha.
it does not put joy and pain on the same page.
Oh, same. So yeah. Well, yeah. I agree. Again, it's just usage of words. I totally agree. I wouldn't disagree with what you said there. Yeah, pain and pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, because according to what I understand from A Course in Miracles, joy is something totally different. Happiness, perfect happiness, is not the same as this ephemeral, short-term, triumphant feeling. I just achieved something, or this or that.
Right. Yeah.
That we do have at times, right?
Yeah.
Or this momentary relief of, okay, it didn't happen the way I thought it would, or my fears didn't turn out that way, right?
Yeah.
That's not the joy or the perfect happiness that A Course in Miracles is speaking of.
Right.
It's speaking about this eternal aspect of who we are, right?
Yeah.
Which is actually something that is constant, and we are basically using the ideas of separation to block our awareness of that constant joy, that constant happiness, that constant acknowledgement of our own nature in
Right.
love
Yes.
and being at one, right?
Well, yeah.
At
Yeah.
peace.
Totally. Yeah.
So
Totally agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yes, there's two levels. There's different levels we're speaking of.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. 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 We're still speaking about the oneness. We're still speaking about the oneness. But yeah, yeah, interesting times. But just kind of just quickly, just going back to, like I said, the astrology, because the astrology, for many people who may not know, I mean, for many people, they you know, a lot of it, they tend to feel like astrology is based on what they see in the magazines and the newspapers, and and astrology is far more in depth than that. What we see in the magazines and newspapers, it's not to say that it's um, not correct per se. What I would just say is that it's very, very incomplete. It's just a very, very, very tiny portion for entertainment purposes. I mean, they may speak about each, I don't know, I think maybe each zodiac sign gets what, 40, maybe 50 words or something. That's it. It's nothing. It could even barely scratch the surface. So people tend to think that, oh, astrology is just based on grouping the world population. And what is the world population now? 8 billion. So they're just, fitting everybody into a nice, neat box of, oh, you're a Gemini, you're a Taurus, you're a Scorpio, you're an Aquarius, and just fitting everybody into this nice box. And astrology could not be further from that, from the truth from that. So, astrology is the science and the study of time, and understanding that time is cyclical. It's not linear as many of us prescribe to or been led to believe, that everything is a cycle in life. And based on where the planets are at that moment of birth, they reflect. And I use the word reflect because that's also another understanding where people do tend to feel sometimes like astrologers believe like the planets are out there in space and we're kind of puppets on a string, and we're just dancing to the tune, what the planets say. So if a planet's in a particular place, you're going to act like that. No, what the astrology is actually saying is it's mirroring, it's mirroring us. So the same way we would say, oh, it's lunchtime, it's time to have our lunch. And for maybe majority of people, they have their lunch at maybe 12:30 or 1 p.m., depending their local time. They will have their lunch around that time. So, but it's not the clock that's making you eat lunch. The clock is just reflecting a period, a moment in time, which allows you to understand that it's lunchtime, or breakfast, or maybe it's your dinner time or whatever. And that's how astrology essentially is. So astrology is like a cosmic clock that is letting us know that, okay, this is the time period you were born, this is the season. And based on where the different planets are, they're going to start to show you when it's your time for this and time for that. And we all get, whether we enter a relationship, we enter at different ages. We enter employment at different ages. We go into different forms of employment. We travel at different ages if we are going to travel, and the list goes on. We may have children at different ages, buy a house at different ages. So everybody has their own individual clock, and astrology enables us to again have that understanding, so that we can make better choices in life, because there's the saying that success breeds success. If we make healthier choices in life, we are going to get healthier results in life. Many choices that went quote unquote wrong or bad, let's say, very often they're coming from a place of maybe ignorance or limitation or unknowing. So if we are aware of certain things, we can say, oh, we can make better choices. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be perfect, but we can make a better choice. And through that better choice, we get better results, which leads us to that path of fulfillment, happiness, purpose, and meaning of life. So yeah,
Yeah, maybe you would like to look at it another way. And of course, in
yeah,
Miracles says that the world came about through a thought of separation.
right, yeah,
There was no world before a thought of separation.
hmm,
Even that is an illusion. So
right, yeah,
even so, it's an illusion. So yes, if that is true, then it's the world can only reflect those thoughts of separation that we're having. So
yeah,
even the stars and planets and everything can only be a reflection of
yeah,
what we brought about through a thought of separation.
yeah,
And it even says that it's past. It already happened. We're
right,
actually at home the whole time.
yeah,
Oh, so it's a very interesting way to see it, right?
yeah,
So no, you're not being pulled on strings because you're the one who brought it about. But
exactly.
but it is as if you were pulled on strings because it's in the past because it already happened. So
Yeah,
you're just
yeah,
watching
yeah, yeah,
you're just watching what already happened
right, yeah, yeah.
and actually isn't true on the top of it. So it's a pretty humorous way of seeing ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, I think it's the Aborigines who speak about dream time, or
Yes, they do.
and I think that's very, and there's also the concept of, there's quite a few schools of thought that allude to the idea that time is an illusion, and there is no past, present, and future. It's all one, right? And depending on the vibration, how we're vibrating, or our awareness, if you want to say, that could be another way of viewing. Is that we like you say, think everything's already happened. You just, it's almost like we're just kind of connecting the dots, kind of thing. I feel it's a little bit like, it reminds me of one of the German folklore, so a very popular one, or fairy tales, if you want to say, of Hansel and Gretel, where they sort of like had to drop the breadcrumbs, and they had to, they dropped the breadcrumbs so that it enabled them to find their way back, um, or a little bit like, in Greek mythology, with the story of the Minotaur, in the maze, when, his name skipped me now, went to go, and he used a bowl of, golden thread, sort of like to find his way through the maze. So I feel this is what we're doing, and what, and I'm speaking of astrology, of course, which is one of many ways, or tool which can be used as a thread, a golden thread, or the pieces of bread, like Hansel and Gretel, to kind of find your way back, because it's all an illusion, it's a dream, it's already happened, but we're picking up the pieces already. A little bit like, for anybody who's seen the movie The Matrix, which I thought was a real powerful symbolic movie. And there was a bit when the Oracle, Neo, was with the Oracle, and she said to him, "You see, you've already made the choice. You're just here to find out. Now you're here to find out why you made that choice in the first place." So yeah, so that's what I feel it's all about, essentially. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a quite a challenge to be able to laugh about it all that way.
yeah,
Because when you're in the situations which you don't feel are so funny,
yeah.
you're
No,
not laughing at all.
of course, of course not, of course not.
But it also says in A Course in Miracles that the world came about because we forgot to laugh.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, yeah,
the laugh, the world, it says the world will end in laughter.
You're right. Yes. Yeah.
Then there will be no world, will be whole.
Oh,
We
well,
will
right.
remember
Okay.
how whole we are already.
All right.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's a
No, most
basic
definitely. Yeah.
so it's basically a remembering about who we are,
Yeah.
which is quite amazing when we think of how different we think we are, how hard we think it is to understand each other,
Right.
right?
Right. I understand. Yeah.
And
Right.
how easily we get caught up in our expectations of what should be happening,
Right.
and get annoyed about what is happening,
Right. Yeah.
about what we don't want to do, about what we want to do, what we don't do, even
Right.
though
Right.
we want to, and
Right.
so on and
Yeah.
so forth, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many things in which we are feeling separate.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so remembering that we are whole is quite fascinating. And I
Yeah.
also was thinking of there's also various schools of astrology, right? There's also other
Yeah.
cultures which have a different astrological
Oh yeah.
systems.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think there's a
The Vedic. Yeah.
Vedic system of astrology as
Yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
then there's
Got
also
the
the
Chinese
Chinese have
astrology. Yeah.
another,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
don't know if
The
you've delved into these different styles or you've chosen one and are very happy with it.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty uh, divination as a whole has always been a special place in my heart, or had a special place in my heart. When I talk about divination, I'm talking about ways, spiritual disciplines, if you want to say, or esoteric approaches to how human cultures throughout the world have, whether you want to say developed or devised, systems of how they connect with the divine, or whether we want to say God consciousness or deity, or some may say the gods. Okay, fine. But I've always been, astrology has just been my passion, and my, I would say my core center in terms of where I function from. And yes, I predominantly practice what is known as tropical or Western astrology, which is what was predominantly practiced by the ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, the Greeks, the Hellenistic Greeks, and all throughout the medieval Renaissance period. I predominantly practice that, but I also know, I'm very knowledgeable about, Vedic astrology also as well. I've learned it, extensively. Although there's so much, it's very vast, and even within Vedic astrology, they have other branches within it. They have what's known as the Parashara, Nadi astrology, KP astrology, and so on and so forth. So they have other levels, even within the Vedic. And then, like you quite rightly pointed out, the Chinese astrology also as well, where they, again, use another form of animals as well, and so on, and they connect it with the elements, whether it's water and iron and fire, earth, and so the five elements which they use in the Chinese. So so I'm fascinated with divination as a whole, as to how cultures utilize it. But what I do find, just like what you said earlier on, um, you know, uh, all roads are leading to that same one place, right? So again, we may say, "Oh, well, it's different." Okay, fine, and there's nothing wrong with being different. I think that saying, they say variety is the spice of life. I truly subscribe to that. Again, we don't have to. I mean, even in the astrology world, I have found astrologers over the years to say, "Oh, well, that astrology it's rubbish, or it's not the correct one," and it's like, well, that argument can be said for the astrology you're practicing too, right? We can use that same argument too. The fact is that it all works. People are finding answers. People are finding it. It's leading them, and it's providing, that gateway then for them to again find more more happiness. So yeah, there are different branches of astrology, and there are also other forms of divination which are not necessarily astrological, although we may see astrological themes in them. There's people numerology and palmistry, and so many other, tarot, and so many runes, geomancy. The list goes on. So yeah, I love divination as a whole. I feel it's a wonderful tool in terms of that has been again developed by various cultures of how they connect with their with the source, with God consciousness, and in order to to elevate them, to bring us. And you mentioned the whole there, which I really like, because it kind of brings me back to the likes of Carl Jung, for example, who speaks about us being a whole, but we are somewhat split or fragmented in some kind of way. Um, uh, and we're trying to piece back, to get back the whole in terms of who we are. We're trying to find that broken piece, or pieces, maybe, perhaps, to kind of bring us back, to make us a greater whole again, to connect with, again, the complete consciousness. So that's what the journey essentially is about. This is what the story of the hero is about. Our heroes, our superheroes, our Supermans and Batmans, and this is essentially all mythological stories, right? These are, again, it speaks about being the whole, getting shattered, and finding your way back again to becoming whole again. And this is what the journey of humanity essentially is about. But again, we're doing it in different ways. So.
Yeah, when you were speaking of the various ways of connecting with the divine,
Yeah,
there's all the trance technologies, all the meditation technologies,
oh yeah,
all the how do you put it? Thinking technologies, so ways of thinking.
yeah,
And there's energy work. There's so many different ways
yeah,
and so many different connections that are being made.
yeah.
And I remember once coming across a brochure where they were speaking how they say it was a Catholic brochure. There were a
Right,
certain Catholic group that saw it that way, not just all Catholics, but a
right.
certain group
Yes,
within the
the
Catholic Church,
Catholic, right?
within it, right?
Yeah,
Not the Catholic Church as a
yeah,
whole.
yeah. So yeah,
They were propagating how they save people from astrology, and how
okay,
that
right,
had destroyed people, right? And
right.
so and I was like, okay, that can't be a general,
Yeah,
truth.
right,
and
right,
and
right. Yeah,
and I would have to know what the issue was for that person, why they thought astrology would tell them everything what they should do. I think it was more like a dependency of
right.
on
Yeah, yeah.
astrology being the telling them what to do and what not to do, if I remember the story
Right,
correctly.
right, right. Yeah,
And then this group, so to speak, got them away from that dependency, right?
right.
But got them into another dependency
And
on a very um, harsh way of living Christianity, right?
right,
Because it was not the open-minded Christianity that
right. It
exists
was
as
a bit.
well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it was more a closed view. But
Right.
so for me, I had the feeling that the person was just as closed before as afterwards, if
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understood the brochure correctly.
You
Right?
correctly.
But that was not the message that they wanted to give. They wanted to say, "We're saving you,
Right,
right?
right. Of
Come to
course,
us."
of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely correct, and I think that's a wonderful, story you brought to the light there. That it does happen, and to some degree in the journey of my life, I've somewhat been guilty for it as well, where I've kind of jumped from one school of thought into another, thinking that Oh, I'm better now. I'm saved. I'm part of the special people. Not realizing that actually no, I was doing the exact same thing. Um, you know, um, as they say, that sometimes we can jump from from the frying pan into the fire, or from one frying pan just into another, and it's just cloaked in a different in a different way. And I think it's very important what you raised there in terms of astrology, because that's why I refer to it's a tool. You mentioned meditation and ways of thinking, and mindsets. Another thing which has become very popular of in the recent years, I know, is affirmations, for example, and things like that, which I'm all for. But we have to remind ourselves that these are methods, these are tools. They're not necessarily for everybody. Um, People will gravitate to maybe one method more than the other, which is fine. But there are tools, and there are tools. A tool is something that we use to allow us to enable to access something, but don't depend on that thing. Don't let that thing become the crutch which you are resting on, which I feel astrology can be that. Uh, um, and just like anything in life, astrology has been, we could say, maybe abused, misused in some ways. Most definitely, and that's just like anything in life. I'm sure whether philosophy, religion, school of thoughts have been used in that way. I do find sometimes it's not necessarily their intention per se. It reminds me of the saying they say, "Oh, all roads to hell are paved with good intentions," and yeah, they do have good intentions, but just like what you said, sometimes they are limited. It's closed, so it's just swapping one for the other, and if one stays there, it can be a bit blinding unless someone can step out of that and realize that actually, no, I don't, let me not cling to any one of these and just try to see that no, it's all about the whole. You see, it's all about connecting to that whole. However you get there, what tool you're using to get there is not the problem. It's all about connecting to that whole, and that's the main thing. You use that tool for whenever you need it, and whenever you don't need it, you put it aside, because there's always something bigger and something greater ahead in front of you. So yeah.
Yeah, it says in A Course in Miracles, it says that only illusions can fight illusions. The truth never changes, right? It's unchanging. So you can do whatever you like. The truth will not change because of that. So it's futile, but
Yeah,
whatever. But we're
yeah,
doing futile things all the time. So
all
I
the
guess
time. Right, right.
so we
Yeah,
have. I guess we need to accept that. But
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So, but only illusions can fight illusions. So, yes.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
if one thought system is saying it's better than another, then it's
But-
fighting. It's
Right.
fighting. So it's both are clinging to illusions.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
it's quite fascinating how easily you can get trapped in that. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Right. Yes.
that was a fun example that I gave.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so many more. So I have nothing. I'm not saying anything negative about one church or another. I'm
Oh no.
just
No.
giving
No.
it,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. No.
or
Totally.
one thought system or another. I was just trying to illustrate the fear that people have
Have. Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
astrology,
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
might get dependent on it, that they might be influenced and
Yeah.
made to, or they might, because they heard something from an astrologist, they might create that experience even though it's
Right. Yeah.
negative,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Exactly.
on and so forth. I was trying to illustrate that school of thought that gets scared,
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
and and yes, we do have fears towards everything we don't know,
No,
and
right,
we do have fear of everything that we think might save us.
right, yeah, exactly, yeah,
Because we get so attached to the being saved.
right, yeah. All right, I get you. I get you. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, it totally makes sense, and I also, subscribe to the idea that I feel there's a sense of, which I totally understand. There's a kind of like preservation kind of thing, this needing to preserve. And again, it comes from insecurities essentially. Um, and I think we find it sometimes in, well, amongst groups of people, tribes, maybe races, maybe uh, there's this need to, they want to maintain, if you want to say maybe a culture, and within that culture there is a religious or philosophy or a doctrine, and we're got to keep it, we got to maintain it. So, well, how do you maintain it? Well, don't allow anything from outside or anything which is different from that to come in, because if it does, it can pollute it, and it can sort of like, it's almost like like a tsunami coming in and taking over, which they don't want. So it's almost like, it kind of reminds me of the analogy of the king who creates this fortress, so to speak, of boundaries and layers to protect, but then what happens is you create this fortress, but it ends up being a prison for you also as well. So it ends up limiting you in the process of you trying to keep and maintain this, whether it's a school of thought or culture. Um, it's quite interesting. And at this stage, I think if there's something that life should teach us, and like I said earlier on, with cultures, I'm fascinated with cultures. I love history. Um, is that things come and go? Nothing. Again, like you say, it's the illusion. What is it that I understand that? Okay, you've created this beautiful culture, but let it flourish, let it take form in the way that it needs to take form, right? Because like what you said at the end, truth will prevail anyway, right? Whatever goes, whatever gets lost or whatever is part of the illusion, right? That's why it's going, because it's not real. But people want to hang on to that. People want to fight for the illusion. Let it, leave it, let it go. Let it, if it needs to form or take another shape or another, like, let it. It's okay. It's fine. Something new can always be, or something new is always going to emerge. There's always going to be new ways of approaching things, and things are always developing. This is where creativity comes out, right? So we can't expect everything to just stay like that forever, right? So, at some stage, at what point does humanity realize that, well, it's all going to go anyway, right? So let's go for something bigger, instead of trying to hold on to that thing, which ends up, yeah, you're trying to protect it. Yeah, you've got good intentions, but that also becomes the prison, which also limits you also as well. And before you know it, you get consumed by the illusion, I guess, on some level. So yeah.
Yeah, luckily, who we are is not an illusion. So
Yeah.
only everything
Yeah.
else can disappear.
Yeah.
But
Certainly.
anyways, yeah, another thing that's fun from A Course in Miracles, it says, "In defenselessness, our safety lies."
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
to live that is quite something I don't know. I have not achieved yet.
Right.
I don't know if I ever will, but it's quite amazing, the
Yeah.
thought that you could be defenseless and be safe because of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's something you can achieve, and I'm sure maybe you will achieve it. Um, well, it's an. Again, I subscribe to the idea that we're on an eternal journey. with various cycles. Um, and it kind of reminds me of an old story an Irish guy told me. Um, he told me about this story about his father in Ireland. Many years ago, that there was this train uh, that used to come, and there was only two trains that would come a day. This was early, and there would be one in the morning, and there'd be one in the afternoon, around about 2 o'clock or something like that. And if you missed it, well, you had to wait till the next day. And but what it was is, to get to the train station, you kind of had to go over a hill, and it was kind of dipped. So when you were coming towards the train station, you couldn't see it until you climbed over the hill and you were coming down the hill. Then you could see the train station. And he said his father was running one day, trying to, he wanted to make the 2 o'clock train, uh, but but what it was is, before the train would go, it would make a sound, doo doo, sound the trumpet at the train, so that people in the area would know that, oh, the train's leaving, the 2 o'clock train's leaving. That's how they would know it was 2 o'clock. So he's trying to race, to try and catch this train, and he meets this old gentleman. As he's coming up the hill, there's an old gentleman coming down, and this gentleman's on a bike, and he says, "Oh, where you going, young man?" And he's like, "Oh, where you?" He's like, I'm trying to catch the train." And as he says that, he hears the toot going off, right? And he said to the old man, "What was that? The sound of the train leaving?" And the old man said to him, "Yeah. What's the problem?" Well, he says, "Well, I wanted to catch that train." And the old man said to him, "Well, it's no problem. There'll be another one tomorrow." Said so, nonchalant, like, he said, "Don't worry. If you miss that one, you'll catch the one tomorrow." It's like no big deal. And he's got this important place he's got to be at. And this guy's just waved it up. Like, don't worry about it. There'll be another one tomorrow. And I think, and again, it's like what you were saying earlier on. I mean, sometimes when we laugh, it's like when we're in the midst of that issue, it's not a laughing thing at that moment. When we're going through maybe a painful experience, for example, it's not, but like you say, we do have to remember to laugh also as well. Um, uh, which also sheds a bit of light onto people, like play. I think play is very important. I think, yeah, we do see players, yeah, you're having a fun time, but there can also be a lot of learning in play also as well. And I feel that's one of the ways why, when we were younger, especially perhaps maybe in nursery or primary school, a lot of the, maybe like the nursery rhymes and they come in a kind of playful format, but it's a way we really get the information sinking in. It stays in. It's a great way for learning also as well. So I also think laughter, at times, can also be a great way to access information and even knowledge to some degree, if we take it in a playful way. Yeah, we must understand that it's serious too, but sometimes seriousness, well, like any extreme, too much of anything can be a bit, if it's too melancholic, it's a bit too heavy, it's a bit too, we might be a bit too tense. Sometimes the information might not flow. So I think it's always about trying to find that balance where, again, pain and pleasure, so to speak, or, we've got to have that equilibrium to some degree to kind of keep us balance. So yeah.
Yeah, basically, in A Course in Miracles, when it speaks of pain and pleasure being the same thing, it's basically saying it's an illusion, right?
Right,
So
right.
so to think that pain is good, or to think that pleasure is good, both are coming from this idea of separation.
Separate, yeah. Right, yeah, right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, to clarify that part.
Yeah.
Anyways,
But what would you say? Just to throw a question back at you, would you say, because I I get a sense that the separation is necessary in a sense. It's almost like we have to separate in order to become whole again. Uh, and okay, one may say, okay, well, so what is the purpose of that? And maybe there is a continuum inside, as in terms of there's a it movement. There's not a stillness, which could be an element of death, I suppose, maybe in a way. But it's necessary that the separation actually happens, so that we come back, we return back. I read somewhere that's what the story of the prodigal son was about. The prodigal son leaving home and then coming back to find himself, and then the father rejoicing that the son came back. And the son who stayed at home kind of found it a bit bizarre that, hey, I'm always been at home, Dad. You never celebrated me, but then my brother who went away and lost all his who he was, and then come back home, he's the one you celebrated, like, kind of thing. Yeah, so like the separation is necessary so that we find it's so, which is a paradox, which I feel what life very much is, a paradox in some kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea that the world came about through an idea of separation and will end through laughter does sound like a paradox in itself.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so I guess if you want to take the message of A Course in Miracles seriously, it is actually embracing
Right.
the paradoxical nature of what we're experiencing, and is
Yeah.
asking us to do the same,
It's the
right?
same. Right. 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 Yeah. 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 Great.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's getting to a time so that
Yeah.
we should start wrapping up. So,
Yeah.
is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to share?
Yeah. No, I think I shared it all really. In terms of, like I say, of course, one could say maybe I'm being a little bit biased in terms of course, like I say, I am an astrologer, so I tend to look at the world through my astrology lens. I'm not by any means saying it's the only way, or that's. I'm very much aware that there are so many ways and so many methods and understandings of how one could find oneself. And but for me, astrology, it has been in my journey, in terms of how I found astrology and how I utilize it today with my students, clients, so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a great way in terms of how people can find themselves, and yeah, through the Course of Miracles as well, like what you've spoken about. Is also doing that same thing. I feel the aim, the mission is the same, but we're just using different methods or different understanding, different language, perhaps too.
Yeah, that's why I like that A Course in Miracles says it's about the message, not the form.
For right, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's what it is. I like that. I'm gonna. Uh, uh, I would use the word steal, but I would say I'll borrow that. For future reference. I do like that. It's about the message, not about the form. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I like that. It makes it so much easier to say, okay, there's many forms, but the
Right.
message is what's important.
It's what
So,
is
are you
important. Yeah,
being loving, or are you being,
yeah.
or are you acting out of love or out of fear?
Right.
And
Exactly.
if you're acting out of fear, then you are in need of love, right? And to
Well, right.
remember.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
So the same goes. The Course in Miracles speaks of it when you encounter someone, you can go from that same thing. They always need love, right? Independent
Right.
of
Yeah.
whether they're acting out of fear in the sense or acting out of love. always love is the right response in any case.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can't do anything wrong by being loving, in other
Right.
words.
Yeah. Exactly. No, totally agree.
so,
That's a good one. I like that one. That's yeah. I'll remember
so,
that one for a long time. Yeah.
so thank you, Israel, for
Thank
joining
you.
me here. That
Thank
was
you very
a
much.
great
Great pleasure.
pleasure.
Yes.
If you
Great
know
pleasure.
anyone who would be a good fit to be a guest here, please let them know about it and let them
Yeah.
reach
Yeah.
out.
I surely will. Yes.
Review the podcast. Let people who are listening and watching, please review the podcast. Let people know about it. And if you know someone who would be a great fit, or if you are a great fit, then please reach out to me so that you can be on the podcast and
Yes.
enjoy the previous episodes. We are over 6 years into the podcast, so there's a lot to listen to. So
Love to
enjoy
listen
that.
to. Yeah.
So blessings to you all. Until next time.
Thank you.